Hello, everybody. This is Tina Hurley with Less Leg, More Heart, and we are really excited because today is the second Thursday of the month, and as you guys know, that is when we do Heart to Heart, our virtual peer support group that's open to all amputees around the country, and really anybody that wants to join in for the content that's health and wellness based. We bring experts that have been vetted to you, to your homes, in the comfort of your homes, to help teach you things that relate to wellness and health, or maybe it's the amputee journey, or it's trauma-based work, or it's nervous system de-escalation, or it's techniques, tips, and tricks that will help you to live a more mindful, calm, and hopefully healthy life. So we are really excited today because Dr. Amy Novotny is joining us for our second year in a row. We're very, very lucky. She is the founder of PABR Institute, and their mission, you have to check them out at pabrinstitute.com. But the whole mission is to provide pain, stress, and anxiety relief to those that are seeking naturalistic forms of treatment when other treatment methods have fallen short. And I know everybody on this call, as well as probably everybody listening, virtually have come to these hard stops where pharmacologics and needles and narcotics and surgeries just don't work, and oftentimes lead to a lot of adverse effects. And sometimes the answers are related to some of the work that we can do that may not be as lucrative for the medical community. And so that's where wonderful companies like this can come in to fill those holes. So she actually comes from a big background in a variety of treating patients. And she's got a really colorful background in not only that, but in authoring books. She's been hired to go on incredible journeys to help some really big names to work on their breathing and work on their health. And I'm sure she can share a little bit more about that. But her methods have helped countless people reduce and eliminate pain, stress, anxiety, orthopedic surgeries, sleep issues, and the need for medications. I'm sure we all could use a little bit of that. She's co-authored those two books that I were mentioning. They're actually #1 best-selling books: Don't Quit, Stories of Persistence, Courage, and Faith, and Success Habits of Super Achievers. So, in her spare time, she likes to, I believe, run and long distances. She's done 40 marathons, running in 10 ultra marathons, including 2 100-milers. She's completed an Ironman triathlon, and she's a very accomplished photographer of wildlife and landscapes all over the world. And she's been most notably featured in the National Geographic Shot of the World Top Photo of the Day. So that was a lot. We are among a very brilliant minds. So without further ado, Amy, take us away.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. And I'm excited to kind of share just some things to help have you think about things differently. So we're going to talk about the nervous system today. We'll probably do a little bit of breathing too, because that's related to it. But the nervous system, we have many different types of nervous systems in our body. Central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, which if you've had an amputation, you're very familiar with that one because some of the nerves got severed. But there's another nervous system that's often overlooked or not mentioned as much, called the autonomic nervous system. And that helps us run our organs inside us. It runs our heart rate, our kidneys, our liver, all of these different organs. And there's 3 components of this nervous system. There's the enteric nervous system, which is your gut and digestion. There is a nervous system called your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your ability to relax, repose, sleep, and there's a digestive component of that as well. And then there's a fight or flight nervous system, which is the one that ramps you up. And we hear the term fight or flight or freeze, and then there's another term called fawn. And fawning is you have this immense desire that you have to people please, and you're very cautious about all your interactions because you're people pleasing. So the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response is very common nowadays in our modern society because we're taught to push, 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 shove, 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 accomplish, don't sit down, don't rest, push till the moment you drop. And you go through this experience and you hear the phrase, "You'll sleep when you die." Well, unfortunately, that can be very detrimental for us because our nervous system, we're not supposed to be up in that fight, flight, freeze mode, fawn mode all the time. Historically, humans would like to be in a parasympathetic mode where you're resting and digesting, you're going through your life, and then periodically you spike up, then you come back down. And we go through this process, okay? Now, we do want this elevated nervous system, this high alert nervous system. We do want that. We really want to have that as a survival tactic and an ability to face different dangers. But we're not supposed to exist up there all the time. There's many reasons why we don't want to exist there. It affects every organ system in our body when we are in a high alert state. Our inflammation, if we're in a high alert state initially, we can control inflammation and injuries. But if you're in a high alert state for a long period of time, your immune system goes down. Your ability to fight off infection, illness, bacteria, fungus, all goes down if you're in this high alert state. Your digestive tract starts to take a big hit if you're in this high alert state. And your ability to absorb nutrients goes down. Your gut microbiome diversity, which is what helps you absorb nutrients, goes down. Our sleep goes down. There's a lot of things that happen because we get into this elevated state. And so we can look at our lives and say, okay, what are all the different things in our life that we can do to bring us out of this high stress mode and to calm us down? And so we're going to talk about some of those ways today to kind of get you thinking about, okay, how can I address my life differently so I can feel differently? I specialize in changing your physical state to help you feel differently, but there's other ways as well that are important, like looking at nutrition. Are you eating things that nourish you to help decrease your inflammation? Sleep is a big issue. Your sleep cycles, you have different types of sleep phases, and you have a sleep cycle that repeats about every 90 minutes. The deep sleep portion is when your brain is calming your body in from a fight or flight state down to a parasympathetic relaxation state. So if you're getting sleep after midnight, where it's more predominant of REM sleep, you're missing out on the slow, deep wave sleep, that where you're shifting nervous system states. So one thing I always tell people is try to get to bed somewhere between 9 and midnight, closer to 9 than midnight, so that you can use sleep as a mechanism to help you calm down, to release your body, and to let go. That's something that we have a really good control over, and it doesn't require anything technical that I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about in just a few minutes. Okay. So those are some things. So if we think about all of our stressors in our life, work, finances, relationships, kids, pandemic, just interactions with neighbors, all of these stressors that happen, they cause a physical response in our body. That physical response, you may have heard of adrenaline or cortisol going up, but it also causes a physical response where your muscles start to contract. And when they start to contract, it's often without our awareness. And you might sense it as I feel on edge, or I might feel tight. Anyone who says my hamstrings are tight, I know they're in a nervous system elevated state, because the hamstrings aren't truly tight unless you haven't moved them for like 6 months, like literally not moved them, and they've developed a contracture. Then they're really tight. But otherwise, it's the nervous system that's contracting, and based on your body position and how you hold yourself, they appear tight. But there's ways that we can notice that this nervous system tightens up and gets us tight. And I just want to give you like a little example. Let's say like we're sitting here right now and we hear the fire alarm go off. Okay. You hear it and you kind of jump and you're kind of startled and you're like, okay, wait, is there really smoke? Is there something going on? And you're kind of in that heightened state. You feel your muscles tighten up. Okay. And then all of a sudden it goes off and you realize, oh, it was just maybe some smoke that came in from outdoors. You're fine. You've intellectually and mentally cleared yourself. But if you don't take the time to clear your body and release the response to the muscles, your muscles will keep engaged that same way and keep you in tension. And this happens day after day, stressor after stressor, because we're never taught to release what the nervous system did in response to a stressor. So I often get people who say, well, I'm 70 years old, I'm supposed to have pain. And I say, it's not your age that you've been on earth. It's how many stressors that have added up over the course of your life that determines how much pain a person is in. And here's why. So every time you have a stressor and your muscles contract, they start to pull on your bones and joints, and they start to pull them slightly out of position. And if your body is not exactly in a neutral, ideal position already, they're pulling on bones and joints that are not in that neutral position. And that starts to layer on top of layer on top of layer until one day you have some big stressful event, you go to sleep, you wake up the next day, you're like, oh, why is my shoulder hurt? I didn't do anything. I didn't lift anything weird. All I did was sleep. And you rationalize that you slept wrong. But what happened is maybe your nervous system response is that you tighten up these upper trap muscles and you kind of hold your shoulders up. Everyone has a different nervous system response. So, but maybe yours is that. And so the shoulders just kind of went up, and you forgot how to truly let them drop all the way down. And maybe your rib cage is up, and so your shoulders are up, and maybe you're trying to pull them down and you're kind of trying to pull them back like this and sticking your chest out, but they're not really dropping down. And so you have muscles that are contracting on it. And then you wake up and the muscles contracted enough that it shifted the bones enough that now things start butting up against each other. Okay. And they start hitting each other, and you can't figure out what to do about it. And you might see someone, a physical therapist, chiropractor, massage therapist, acupuncture, who all have great modalities to do something externally to you, to try to shove on that muscle, push on those upper traps, try to stretch your arm out, try to say, let's strengthen it, let's get it stronger, bulk it up. You might have all those external things, and sometimes they might work, and sometimes they might be a temporary fix. But what happened was your nervous system never got trained to let go of that tension day after day after day. And that creates more and more issues. The longer we're on earth, the more we're alive. And I'll see kids who've had super stressed lives in 15 years of their life that have the same amount of aches and pains as someone who's 70, because the stressors have added up. And even someone who's 70, who's bone on bone, you get the muscles to start to release their tension, their bones go back into position, pain goes away. They're still bone on bone, they still have arthritis, but that wasn't the source of their pain. So as we're going through, and I'll demonstrate with my body a little bit of what I'm talking about too, but I want you to think about when you have stress or tension in your body, it's very vital we learn how to control that, reduce the tension so the muscles and bones release their hold, because that allows the body to start to move and be free again. And as we're doing that, you can feel your body just start to let go and relax. And you feel just this wave of just calm go through you. And when your physical body learns how to relax, the mind, the emotions don't perceive your stressors as a great a danger as they did before. If your physical body is set to be in a state of high alert, if that next argument you have will be perceived at a greater stress level than if your body had been in a relaxed mode and you're like, okay, I'm having a disagreement, but it's not really like, I feel safe and I can handle it different. My emotions are going to be different. I'll be less emotionally reactive. And what I'm saying sounds like it's farce and, all that stuff. But I do this all day long with executives, business owners all over the world and people next door. And you see their personality change. And it's really fascinating, because we'll get spouses that are like, wait a second, you're completely different. Like, you're talking to me differently. You're not so reactive. And I say this because the nervous system really impacts every aspect of our lives. And I'm saying this because it really does matter. Okay. So one of the biggest things about this nervous system is how do we learn to control it? We can do it externally by looking at our schedule, eating differently, sleeping differently, but we can also change our body state to help it calm down. And the two ways to do that, two big ways to do that, let me put it that way, that work very well together is how we hold our position and how we breathe. And that's very different than breath work. So it's not breath work. We're not going to be like sitting and doing box breathing or anything like that. But your mechanics of how you breathe depends on your body position. So before we can do anything with anyone, we have to start out with what is the position of your body. And by that, I mean position of the ribs, pelvis, shoulders, head, neck, not necessarily your posture. When we see the word posture, we think, okay, sit upright, chest out, shoulders back, suck up your gut, and we sit a certain way or we stand a certain way. And I'm talking about how do you position yourself, sitting, standing, lying down on your hands and knees, when you bend over, when you reach, everything that you're doing. How do you position and control yourself? So I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to stand up and demonstrate. It's going to be a tiny bit harder for me to demonstrate because I am currently pregnant, so I can't suck it up and in as well because
And
there's
we're all wishing you the most successful, amazing completion of that baby due in May. Congratulations.
Thank you. So usually it's a little bit easier to suck it up and in, but right now, not so. So we're going to talk about position. And what I mean is we're going to start with the rib cage position. So if you think about the word cage, it usually denotes a cylinder. Okay. Something that's a cylinder is most stable when it's on its flat base. As soon as it tips on its edge, it becomes very unstable. Our rib cage is our personal cylinder. Okay. If my ribs are flush, these lower front ribs, if they're flush with the muscles below, then I know I'm in neutral. If my ribs are lifted up and there's that drop off, you can see what just happened to me. If I'm in neutral and then I just lift up, you can see how I tilted back. Right now, I can feel the increase in pressure in my low back. And now I'm hinging off of my low back instead of being down here in neutral. Okay. And there's a difference. This is neutral. I'm not trying to get us to here. Okay. We need to be able to curl completely and extend fully, but we need to exist in neutral. Okay. The problem is we are taught chest out, shoulders back, suck up the gut, and we're taught to exist this way. And you can feel as soon as you do that, you can feel the back muscles tighten up and you can feel the muscles in the rest of your body tighten up. And if you can't feel it, you're likely already in this state. Okay. And what we want to get is the rib cage to be able to drop down and back into neutral so that I have a nice gentle curve here. I have a gentle curve in the upper back, the opposite direction, and I have a gentle curve in my neck. Okay. Our back is not supposed to be a board and it's not supposed to be straight. Our vertebrae are not shaped to allow that to happen. And when you try to force it, you get herniated discs, you get slip discs, you get compression fractures, you get a lot of different comorbidities and problems. Okay. And I'm going to relate how this all relates to the nervous system in a second. But let's go a little bit deeper. So if my ribs are lifted up and I'm sucking my gut up and in, and I'm pulling my shoulders back, I can feel my back muscles working more. Okay. That also tilts my pelvis forward. So now the weight of my body is going through my legs differently, which is going to change my balance and how I use my thigh muscles. Okay. This will affect how stable you are and how safe your body feels within itself. Even if you have an amputation and you're using a brace or an orthotic or a prosthesis, this still matters because we want to get your body weight to be on the heels a little bit instead of forward on the toes where you have less base of support. And when you shift back a little bit more and you get these ribs down, now your thigh muscles can start to hold your body weight. Okay. This also affects our upper body. If my chest is out, shoulders are back, and I'm sucking up my gut, I've now decreased the space in my shoulder joint because my shoulder blades have moved in a place where it actually literally decreases the space. So if you're doing weightlifting and your chest is out, your shoulders are back, your back is arched, and you're doing weightlifting, you're doing it in a compromised shoulder position, which is why a lot of people will get labral and rotator cuff injuries. And then it affects the neck, jaw, can lead to headaches and migraines. I'm working with a physician right now who was taught to be like this, literally has had migraines that she associated with her menstrual cycle for decades and has been taking medications. This last menstrual cycle, no medications, no migraines. And she had always thought it was because of her cycle and the hormonal fluctuations. And I didn't tell her, I didn't say, no, you're wrong or anything. I said, let's work on this stuff. Her rib cage started dropping down, no migraine. Okay. And so I say this because the position of your ribs really does affect you from head to toe. I've even worked with people with a big toe issue. Literally, we worked on the ribs and we never dealt with the toe. And the toe pain went away.
Dr. Novotny, has anyone's legs ever grown back with this work?
Damn no. I'll keep working on that. Gotta figure out that one. So when we're going through this and we're looking at the position of your rib, you're like, okay, who cares? Like, why should I care about my rib cage position other than you're telling me it will make me feel better? Well, the nervous system, that fight or flight nervous system, lies along your spine. Okay. When it's along your spine, it can be physically activated when the back muscles here are compressing on it. So if you start using these muscles all the time because you're walking around and you're reaching like this and you're squatting like this, guess what? Those muscles are compressing on that fight or flight nervous system. And it's telling me, and I can feel in my arms, I can just feel like tension that I'm ramping up. And sometimes that's useful. Like let's say you've been sitting in a lazy posture all day and you're just like this and you're like typing. And what do? We go, let me stretch and wake myself up. That's what I just did. I kicked in my back muscles to stimulate the nervous system to wake me up. So yes, at times it's helpful. And let's say you're super sleep deprived and you really need sleep, but you have maybe some kind of project going on. Yes, you can sit at the edge of your chair, throw your chest up and start typing, and it's going to help you keep awake. Is it good for your health? No. But in an emergency situation, you can use these concepts to help you. But ideally, we want to get the chest in, ribs down, so the back learns how to go back in neutral so it's not overstimulating that fight or flight nervous system. Okay. So that's one component of whenever we're looking at the nervous system, we have to see what is the issue with the back. Now, as I get bigger because of this little boy, I am being very, very careful, and I do these exercise positions every day to make sure my ribs are down. And no matter how far he wants to grow out, my ribs are going to stay down so I don't become like a typical pregnant woman that's like this. Because if I try to push a baby out like this, guess what? It's not going to be very comfortable, and I'm going to be using my back. I'm going to kick in my nervous system. I'm going to tighten myself up, and it's going to be hard for me to relax to push him out. But if I can get him here, if I can get myself here and stay here, guess what? It's going to be a lot easier for me to relax my body. And we'll go through in a little bit here, a little tiny exercise for you to feel it too. Okay. So how does this relate to the nervous system? Because it's in the back. And then how does it relate to your breathing mechanics? We're going to go through that next. Okay. So the position of these ribs determines how much support we have for our diaphragm, the muscle that we have in our body that's designed to help us breathe. Most people don't use it the way it should be. So we have to work on getting it to be the dominant way we get air into our lungs. Okay. The reason why we have a diaphragm, it's shaped like a dome, like a silo. If you imagine a grain silo. When you inhale, the dome of the silo flattens, which creates a negative space, negative pressure that's like vacuuming air into you, and your lungs inflate like balloons on each side. Okay. When you exhale, that dome goes back up to get ready for the next inhale to try to pull air back in. Now, for this to happen and this dome to go up and down, the diaphragm has to have supportive walls, which are represented by the palms of my hand. Okay. If those walls aren't strong and supporting this dome from going up and down, if those walls are up like this, now you can see the movement of the diaphragm is going to be less. If they're up here, the movement of the diaphragm is even going to be less. And the thing that supports those walls of the diaphragms are these ribs being down and in, like that. Which is why if you have a baby or a big belly or you just hold yourself where you're like this and your ribs are flared up, it's why so many people get out of breath so easily, because if my ribs are flared up, now I can't use my diaphragm as much. So what do I have to do to breathe in? I have to lift my ribs up more. I have to throw my chest out more. My shoulders come involved. My back starts to breathe for me. And when I'm doing that, there's a physical limit to how much I can do for that. Eventually, if I need more air in, let's say I'm in Colorado at the top of a peak or something, and I need to get more air in, but I've already gotten to my limits, I'm going to be really short of breath because I can't draw any more air in because I can't lift any higher. And when you are under stress or have a big stressor, your chest goes up, your ribs go up automatically, just does it without you even knowing it. It happens to me, even if I've had a huge stressful something happen, I already know my chest is going up, my ribs are going up, I'm going to be off, and my breathing is going to be affected. So I have to work really hard, get it all back down so I can switch back to my diaphragm. Because as soon as I can use that diaphragm and it becomes more dominant, it stimulates a nerve that switches us from sympathetic to parasympathetic. It's called your vagus nerve that runs through the diaphragm. So the more we get that diaphragm working and supported where the dome goes up and down, the more we're going to feel relaxed. So the position of your rib cage is critical to getting the diaphragm to work. And so often when I've had worked with people, sometimes it's just with trauma or PTSD, they're very scared to do any breath work because they've tried it before. And they're like, I've tried breath work and I'm sitting like this and it just makes me even more anxious because they just practice breathing and stimulating their nervous system at the same time. So they weren't able to get themselves to calm down because the ribs weren't in the position for them to use the diaphragm to calm them down. Okay. So the position of your ribs affects you from head to toe in terms of your joints. It affects your ability and how you use the diaphragm to breathe. And it affects two different ways that nervous system based on the diaphragm and based on compression of the nervous system itself. One other component is when your rib cage is up and you're using your ribs to breathe instead of your diaphragm and it becomes more shallow, that tells your brainstem you're in fight or flight mode. So you're going to tighten up more. So there's a lot that we can do physically with our body to help us feel what relaxation really means and for our muscles start to let go of that abnormal contraction that happens because we're human, because we experience something that is perceived as a stressor. Our muscles will contract because we're human beings. So, but we can combat that and make sure it doesn't carry over day to day. And all of you who've had an amputation, you've had some major event in your life. So your nervous system has been ramped up. And we're going to go through it in a little exercise here in a second to kind of help you start to feel this. It may not feel perfect right now. You might not feel this whole grandiose response, depending on how mobile your chest is able to be, your breastbone, and how much guardedness you've had based on your life history, not just surrounding the amputation, but surrounding other social issues, family issues, childhood issues, financial issues. All of those play a role in it. But the more we can get you to feel safe in your body, it's easier for your brain to start processing the past and what's going on in the future. And sometimes, and I'll just put this out there too, sometimes as you're going through this, your body starts to respond and release emotions. So it can show up as crying. It can show up as an arm flailing or a leg flailing, or you just need to shake it out. It can show up as people change into a different personality. I've had all the responses. But as the body starts to release what's been stored in it, based on the muscles changing their behavior, there can be releases. So I just want to let you know, just in case you do feel something, you're like, what the world just happened? That is a possibility. So any questions before we go through a little exercise? We good? Okay. I'm going to sit back down then. So we're going to do this in a seated position. If you have a straw or something similar to a straw, I would grab it. It does make the process better. It's not mandatory, but even if you don't have one right now and you want to practice this again, I highly recommend grabbing a straw. And then I take a normal size straw and cut it in half just to make it easier on the lip muscles, because most people's lip muscles are not used to holding a straw for a long period of time. So, okay. So as we go through this, whenever we do something for the nervous system, we always want to say, am I in the position that allows me to calm the nervous system down? If I'm not in that position, then I know it's not going to be as effective. So if I'm sitting in a chair, I'm going to demonstrate a couple things. If I'm sitting in a chair, and one of the first things we do in a chair is we want to sit all the way back, let the low back relax, let your tailbone curl under a little bit. Now, a lot of people have a lumbar support back there, and guess what that does? It pushes them into extension, which is going to compress on the nervous system to tighten them up. So I say, let your back relax. The next thing we want to do is keep the feet flat on the floor, and then look at the level of the hips, hip crease right here to the knee. I lifted up my chair to make a point. Most people, the chair is too tall for them, and the knee is below the hip crease. And sometimes you have to hold a phone out to actually see it, because if I look down and I'm like, oh, it looks good enough, you know, from visually looking down, you often are off a couple inches. Now, if I pull this chair and I lower it, now you can see the relationship between my hip and knee is much different. And my knee is at the level of the hip crease, maybe a tiny bit higher, but I just felt my whole low back and back relax a lot more. My butt cheeks can open up. They feel nice and squishy. I feel much more comfortable. Okay. So this would now be in a position that's going to allow me to relax. So if you're sitting on a couch, or if you're sitting forward, or you're sitting on a stool, ideally you want to change or adjust, look at the structure of how you're sitting to make sure it's somewhat similar to what I'm doing. You don't have to do that now, but I'm just telling you, you will get more of an effect if you can make those adjustments. And sometimes it means putting some books under your feet. It means adjusting the height of the chair. It could be a lot of different things, some type of platform, those types. Okay. So then, now that we have the rib cage where it's given permission to relax down in front, now if you have the straw, this is the time when we put it in your mouth, and just put it between your lips. Try not to bite on it with your teeth. Okay. And you want to make sure you're sitting all the way back. We're going to put one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly. We're going to start out by just doing a 4-step kind of breathing thing. And then it's going to get more complicated as we start pulling in parts of the body to help us feel relaxation. Okay. So you can have your eyes open or closed, whichever you want. I'm not going to be demonstrating anything. I'm just going to be talking you through this. Okay. So we're going to breathe in the nose gently. Pause, and then hold and blow out through the straw. Hear the air coming out of the straw as you blow out. Hold and breathe in. Gently breathe in your nose. Just think gentle breath in. And blow out through the straw. Hear the air coming out, and then you're going to hold your breath. Even if you don't have a straw, you can do this. Hold. And breathe in. Gently breathe in your nose. And blow out. Hear the air coming out of the straw as you feel your chest melt under your hand. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in gently. And blow out. Feel the chest melt in under your hand. Feel your belly spill out under your other hand. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in your nose without effort. And blow out. Feel the chest melt in. Feel your ribs begin to drop down as your belly spills out. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in your nose without lifting your ribs. And blow out. Feel the chest melt under your hand. Use it as a cue. Feel your armpits relax. Hold your breath. And breathe in. Feel the air go in gently, your nose to your throat. And blow out. Feel the wave going down your body. Chest melts in, low back relaxes. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in without effort. And blow out. Feel the collarbones drop away from your neck. Your chest melts in, your belly spills out. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in. Good. And blow out. Feel the wave going down your body. Belly softens. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in your nose to your throat. And blow out. Feel the chest melt in. Feel your ribs drop, creating space in your armpits. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in. Go gently. And blow out. Sink the chest in. Feel the belly spill out. Feel your butt cheeks open. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in without effort. And blow out. Armpits relax. Let that low back go. Belly softens. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in. And blow out. Feel the wave going down your body. Belly softens. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in. Good. And blow out. Let that low back go. Butt cheeks open. Belly softens. And take a break. Okay. So I saw some of you guys kind of getting into it. For those that were trying, could you feel your chest melt in? Yeah, maybe. Okay.
I did. Definitely one of the challenges I think that I have, I'm a little bit ramped up coming into these, just my day and a toddler. And So when I breathe out, it's so paradoxical in my head to let my lower section relax. I had to really work through my innate need to like compress my abs, almost like a workout. So that was helpful the way that you were describing it, because it was definitely something I need to get better at.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on that because that brings up a really good point. So we're used to creating an hourglass where we close off the middle and come out, our midsection. We're trying to get that cylinder where you have an open flow of blood and tissues and everything. So, and that's a very common thing where you're used to guarding and holding yourself up and being in that ramped up state to help you get through the day. So at first it can feel very vulnerable to let your midsection go. And you're like, wait a second, I'm dropping down. What do you mean? How do I? Yeah. And then the next step is learning to stabilize like that. So this is like step 1 of 100. The remaining steps are, okay, we get you relaxed. How do you stabilize there? So you can exist there, so that you can exist in this calm state. So any other people want to chime in on what they felt? No? Okay.
I can. I mean, I know people jumping on these calls that may not have done this kind of work in general before, or these settings. It might be, and you guys can feel free to ever, like if you have comments, but you just maybe don't want to say them, you can message it to me directly or Amy. I felt a little lightheaded because I think I've been shallow breathing for the large majority of my day, and I can feel it because I feel tense. I woke up with a crank in my neck that I thought I slept poorly on. So I can relate to all those things you mentioned. But I think that was the first time today that I was aware of the depth of my breathing and was like lightheaded as soon as we stopped.
Yeah, and part of it is too, when you're first going through it, and if you feel a little bit lightheaded, you're kind of transitioning. You're not fully using your diaphragm, but you're trying to use your diaphragm, but you don't really know how to use it yet. And so there's this difficulty, like you almost feel like it's harder to get air in because you're dropping things down, but you don't know how to let your diaphragm do the work to get air into your lungs. So that is definitely part of the process. And what we were doing today is focusing on the exhalation. There's a whole nother segment of focusing on the inhalation, but you can't change the way you inhale until you know how to exhale with your ribs getting down. So.
It's always so much more complicated than we appreciate. We do this thing every day, all day, mostly wrong. And when it's broken down, and there's so many layers to this, and there's so much science to this, and there's so much just education on this, what other people would perceive, myself even prior to this, ignorantly, lacking of knowledge is the word, but there's so much to it that I feel like folks negate it a lot because the importance is somewhat lost in modern society. And I learned from you last year, and I was really religious for weeks following the seminar, and it was really helpful. And I've been getting my son to like take a few breaths before we transition on activities. And there's just so much to learn. I think I'm hoping that folks are a little bit inspired with the background of physiology, some of the micro adjustments that can be made to just to try it for a while to see if you can feel the difference, because saying it is one thing, but really the proof's in the pudding. And unless you kind of put the energy in to keep an eye on stuff and start making those adjustments, you'll never really know if it worked or it didn't. But I can tell you personally that, and I know that this is what you've done for a living, and it's obviously a renowned topic, but I really benefit from this type of work. And I'm really excited to continue to learn more, because I felt as I was inhaling, there was resistance, like a heaviness, like I was having to force myself to inhale more slowly because I felt like there was just a resistance. And I know that there's so many parts to that could be correcting.
Yeah. And people will say like, oh, I already know how to breathe. I need to get oxygen. And like, who really cares? And hopefully you can understand it does affect every organ system. But the other thing is how you walk right now is not the same as when you learn to walk as a toddler. It changes over the course of your life. Same thing with breathing. Your breathing mechanics change based on what people told you that you should stand or exist like. And so that's why we're trying to get it back to that natural state, but it's going to take some time and practice, because what you are doing as you are breathing is resetting your nervous system. So that's the key, is if you're breathing in a neutral state and you're in a relaxed state, guess what? Your nervous system is learning to keep you in a relaxed state. But if you're breathing while in a ramped up state, your nervous system's going to reflect that.
A couple of comments. The first is, I can relate this to just an everyday activity, translate this to a moment yesterday. A lot of you on the call might be aware of Hugh Hare. He's one of the leading mechanical engineers that are inventing these incredible technologies for prosthetics. They work at MIT. I mean, he's just the most incredible inspiration as an amputee. That being said, I made a personal connection with him yesterday, and I was so excited about it that I was sort of feeling like a fangirl, breathing kind of shallow and really excited for the opportunity, and just baffled, and all these emotions are resurfacing from my past and all these circles of thought from back in the previous trauma days, and breathing shallow, and that typical sort of fight or flight, that state. Immediately into the TV show The Last of Us on HBO Max, which is incredible, but it's kind of a thriller, and I don't typically tolerate a lot of thriller and recreational anxiety shows anyway, but I went in already elevated. I did not reset. I hadn't had any kind of break, and I was like borderline uncomfortable with how anxious I was feeling watching this TV show. I mean, if I had to percentage gauge it, it was probably 400% more unnerved than a typical show would cause me. And so it was that type of domino effect where things were just sort of falling down or spilling over. And this happens in my days regularly because I don't take those moments. So I guess my question after that sort of comment, which I think a lot of you guys can probably relate to, is, say that you have a doctor's appointment, and maybe whether things went well or didn't go well, or you have a prosthetist appointment and things may have gone well or didn't, but there's a lot of nerves surrounding it. Sometimes the stakes are high, your system's ramped up. What type of sort of like prescribing pattern or what implementing these kinds of techniques from like how many times a day or situationally or to make an effect could people start trying in the first steps of learning this?
Yeah, so just with what we did, like that's step one. If you do that 5 minutes and do that when you first wake up, midday, and when you go to bed, you can start to feel changes. I mean, I work with people on a weekly basis for an hour each week. They won't do any practice, but that hour that we do have once a week, they make huge changes. And I just say, can you just at least do 5 minutes once a day? Just 5 minutes, like literally 5 minutes. And as soon as they do, their changes happen more and more. Now, let's say you go to that doctor's appointment, and I do this after every doctor's appointment. I sit in the car and I sit for a few minutes. I get my knees higher than my hips and I sit there and breathe. And I just calm down before I even drive away. I'm like, I want everything out of my body that just happened because of that doctor's visit. I don't want it to exist and to affect anything else in my body.
Are you talking about like legs up the wall?
No, just sitting in a car, just have my knees higher than my hips. In a lot of cars, you can get that, where you just have your knees higher than your hips. So just kind of when we were sitting earlier, you always just want your knees, the level of your hip crease or slightly higher. If I'm really ramped up, I'll get them a lot higher. And so that way, as I'm breathing, it's calming my back down even more.
So fascinating. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I have a few more things I'm going to mention toward the end of this, but I just want to give space for anybody to comment if they want.
Yeah, I would like to say it relaxed me a lot, those techniques. And I was using it when I was teaching first grade. I was kind of using a similar thing with yoga and breathing. After the kids come back from, running around doing playtime, and they come back in the classroom, I had them to mellow down. And I was just thinking, I want to incorporate the skeletal system into that as well. So very helpful.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. it makes a big difference. And for any of you who do meditation, stop sitting with your chest out, shoulders back, legs crossed like that. You're confusing your body and your brain. Your body, by sitting in a yoga pose with your legs crossed and you're like this, sitting really straight, you're telling your body to be in a state of fight or flight. And then you're saying to your brain, okay, calm down, release everything, let go. And your mind's like, well, no, I'm going to be in a heightened state because my body is. So I'm going to think about all these things that are going on throughout the day. So if you're doing meditation too, like look out for that and sit so that you're relaxed back. If you fall asleep, awesome. You just got everything in coherence and you fell asleep.
So funny you said that, because I took a yoga class earlier today, and it's just like you mentioned, legs are crossed, tall backs, tuck your tummy. So in those circumstances where you're in a class on a mat, what's preferable?
I let my chest go in, roll back towards my tailbone. And if the teacher yells at me, say, just do it my way.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm changing it up.
That's great. Anybody else, any comments? Okay, well, I'm dropping a few things in the comments. There's a link first and foremost to Dr. Novotny's institute. There's information about her life, the work that she does, ways that you could benefit from these types of techniques. If there's any amputee that's on the call that finds that this could be a great method for them, Less Leg More Heart is a really generous contributor for the holistic approaches to care. And so if this is something that you need any kind of funding assistance for, we would be happy to help you. Just Stacy, did you have something? Just unmute.
Yes, I did. Sorry. I just had a quick question. It just reminded me of yoga and the breath. That is it opposite of what we were doing? Because I remember it's like you spill the belly out when you. Can you just go over that again? Because I feel like it's different for when we practice yoga.
Yoga is usually different. They usually tell you suck in, but you actually want to blow out as you want your belly to come out as you blow out. Because if you suck your gut up and in, you're going to lock your ribs up. You're not going to support your diaphragm. So you want your belly to spill out so your ribs can drop down so you can support the diaphragm. So, yeah.
That because for years and years of yoga, I'm like, wait a minute, I can't switch my brain to change it. But it took a long time till the end to change that. So
it will take some time. And I just want to mention also, I just launched a course too. So if people are busy, they can't do one-on-one, I do have a course that allows you to go through the videos, and there's lessons and there's tons of stuff on that. That's another option too, that seems to suit a lot of people who have really kind of busy and chaotic schedules.
That's really helpful. So yeah, guys, go ahead and click through the links in the chat so that when this is closed out, you still have those open in your browser windows. But Amy, thank you so much again for coming back and for sharing this information. Everyone that's either here today or that's watching on any of our platforms we share this on, I'd recommend you absolutely look at our website and look at those courses and really invest in yourself in this kind of important way. I wanted to mention that our next meeting, it's the second Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. Eastern via Zoom, and it's the same login link and meeting ID. Anyone that wants to register, we have a heart-to-heart section in the About tab on our website. It just allows them to get emails so that they get updates on information coming up. Next month's speaker is a dear friend of mine also. He's an immunologist, molecular biologist, and has studied fitness and nutrition in conjunction with those subject matters. And he's actually coming in as a great piggyback, Dr. Novotny, to speak about the microbiome and the gut and the way that it, what it is, why it's important, how it affects health, and how the research in the last decade has really brought up some important points about the things that we're eating and what our gut is doing to the things that we're eating, and the medical system and the antibiotics and all these things that we're taking in. And so you guys aren't going to want to miss it. It's profound, the type of effect that system also has on our global health. So you won't want to miss it. I hope to see you all back there. Amy, you're always welcome. We would love to have you anytime you want to join. But again, thank you all for spending your evening with me. And as always, make sure you leave and put your best foot forward.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Okay, see you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.